All right, y'all, time for the tomatoes. And for this one, it is tomatoes. And no, I do not have a PDF because I forgot I needed to plant these. And I don't want to die, and my family would probably kill me if I did not plant these. That will probably get me in trouble with YouTube for saying that. But that is fine. We're going to put these about 1/8 of an inch down. This is my pepper tray, and that is because both tomatoes and peppers do need a heat mat for germination, or just a lot more heat than other seeds do. And nobody needs 338 tomatoes. I learned that last year. But if you are looking for a very sweet cherry tomato, tomatoes are friggin' prolific. Next, we have purple tomatillos. You are going to need at minimum 2 tomatillos to get any tomatillos. This is from Botanical Interest. It is an annual. We're going to put the seed depth at about 1/4 of an inch. When we go to transplant outside, it's going to need 36 inches of space. It's going to take roughly 10 days to emerge. It's going to need 8+ hours of sunlight. Our ideal temp is between 80 and 85 degrees Fahrenheit, and it's roughly 70 days to maturity. These are most definitely not a cold tolerant plant like most tomatoes. I have yet to grow these before, but I really want to try them, and I've never been able to find an actual plant for sale near me. So seeds it is. If you would like to follow along, you can grab these PDFs in the stand store. The link is in the description. We also have a Google Doc that you can make a copy of and make edits to all you want for $10.99. Next, we have a glacier bush tomato, which I got from Botanical Interest. It ran $2.29 at the time I purchased it. We're going to start these at about 1/4 of an inch in the soil. When we go to transplant, we're going to put them at 24 inches apart. It takes roughly 10 days to emerge. It's going to need 8+ hours of sunlight. Ideal temp, again, is 70 to 90 degrees Fahrenheit. It's roughly 55 days to maturity. And again, no tomato is cold tolerant. So we will keep these bad boys warm. They're going to get fairly big, and we're going to have to up-pot all the tomatoes multiple times. And that's perfectly fine. For those who have stuck around this far, do you prefer the music in the videos, or would you prefer silence? I know I talk super fast, and I don't want to overrun anybody's brain. So please let me know down in the comments. Thanks. And next we have our red pride tomato bush, again from Botanical Interests. This is going to be at a seed depth of roughly 1/4 of an inch. When we go to transplant outside, it's going to be 24 inches. And again, 10 days to emerge, 8+ hours of sunlight. The ideal temp is the same, to 70 to 90 degrees Fahrenheit. It's roughly 78 days to maturity. Again, not cold tolerant. Don't like the cold. And just something to note, when you're just going into summer, you're like, oh my God, I want a fresh, awesome garden fresh tomato. The things you're getting at a store that they're marking garden fresh are not really technically garden fresh. They're greenhouse tomatoes, which is why they taste slightly different than what you grow at home. And anybody who has had homegrown tomatoes knows that they taste so much different from what you are getting in a store. It's just a transformative experience, y'all. Next, we have our Artisan Bumblebee Blend Tomato Pulled Cherry. A pulled cherry has vines, and it needs lots and lots and lots of space. I grabbed these from Botanical Interests. They are about 1/8 of an inch seed depth when we go to plant them. They need 24 inches of space when you transplant outdoors, roughly 10 days to emerge, 8+ hours of sunlight. They prefer 70 to 90 degrees, and they have 70 days to maturity. So again, roughly July is when you're going to start seeing some tomatoes. And for those who are new to growing tomatoes, there are 2 types of tomatoes. You have a bush tomato and you have a vining tomato. Do not mix them, or you get the tomato jungle that I have last year, which you can see in some of the videos that I posted, and it turns into a hot mess. Know which type you are getting. Poles have vines, and the others will say bush, or you can also All right, next we have chocolate cherry pulled tomato, another vining tomato from Botanical Interests. We are going to start these at 1/8 of an inch of seed depth. Then when we go to transplant outside, it's going to be 24 inches apart. Again, it is a pulled tomato. It vines. It goes crazy. These have about 10 days to emerge. Again, we need 8+ hours of sunlight, 70 to 90 degrees Fahrenheit, 70 days to maturity, and then we will be overrun with tomatoes. Just be prepared if you are growing tomatoes. We think they're going to fail. I always think everything is going to fail, and then shit hits the fan, and I have a ton of food preservation to do. But this year, I'm growing different varieties so that I can try different things, and these looked really freaking cool. And who doesn't love some color? So we have some rainbow blend tomato pull cherries. Again, that means vining, and even the seeds are colorful. So it's different colored seeds, which I thought was freaking cool. I got these from Botanical Interests. We're going to start them at 1/8 of an inch of depth in this soil. We are going to space them 24 inches apart when we get them outside. They're going to take roughly 10 days to emerge. Again, 8+ hours of sunlight, 70 to 90 degrees Fahrenheit, and 90 days to maturity. So these will take a bit longer than your other pull cherry tomatoes, but they should be super freaking pretty. Next, we have Speedy tomato pull cherry. Why am I growing all the vining things? This did not go well for me last year, and the vines almost killed me. However, we're going to plant these at 1/8 of an inch depth in the soil. When we go to transplant outside, again, 24 inches of space because they take up a lot of freaking space. You want to give them all the way up to grow. Most of these will continue to grow as long as they have the upward ability to grow. These will take roughly 10 days to emerge. You need 8+ hours of sunlight, 70 to 90 degrees Fahrenheit, and these actually have a shorter maturity rate, so they mature roughly in about 65 days. Again, you're looking at July before any tomatoes start coming out of your garden. And yes, I'm growing a ton of tomatoes, but I really want to figure out which ones I like so that next year I can just plant the ones that I really, really like and then get a ton of them and figure out the recipes that will go well with them so I can do all the things. Now we're going to go into indigo rose tomato pull cherry. I've really got to stop finding freaking tomatoes. Anyway, I grabbed these from Botanical Interests. They are a very dark purple color. We want to put them at roughly 1/8 of an inch in seed depth. 24 inches when we go to transplant outside. They're going to take roughly 10 days to emerge. Also, 8+ hours of sunlight, 70 to 90 degrees Fahrenheit, and 90 days to maturity. Also, nope, no cold. They do not like the cold. No, we're not doing the cold. Anybody else tired of the cold? Because I'm really tired of the cold, icky wetness. Thank the universe, we hit a bush tomato. Right now we have the Ace 55 bush tomato from Botanical Interests. This is going to be 1/8 of an inch seed depth. And then when we go to transplant outside, it is also going to need 24 inches. There is 10 days to emerge with 8+ hours of sunlight. We're going to need 70 to 90 degrees Fahrenheit, and it's going to take roughly 80 days to emerge. Also, no, again, not cold tolerant. The one thing with bush tomatoes, they don't tend to keep producing. So you're just going to get a rush of tomatoes all at once, whereas the vining tomatoes will continue to produce as long as they have a place to grow. But honestly, even my bush tomatoes last year, I kept getting tomatoes constantly. That's all the tomatoes. I was so tired of freaking tomatoes. And when I went to process them, it looked like I had slaughtered somebody in my kitchen. Next, we have the black cherry tomato. This one's actually from Burpee. because I randomly found it and I'm addicted to buying seeds at this point. We're going to start this at a seed depth of roughly 1/8 of an inch. When we go to transplant outside, it's going to need 24 inches of space between the plants. It will take roughly 10 days to emerge. However, this tomato only takes 6+ hours of sunlight. So if you have a spot in your garden that gets just a tad bit less light than the other spots, that is a good place for this tomato. It is very rare that you see any tomatoes under 8+ hours of sunlight. The ideal temp is 70 to 90 degrees Fahrenheit. Its days to maturity is 75. So again, we are looking at the wonderful month of July. The next seed we have are Bonnie Best tomatoes. I had figured out whenever I went to the store and bought tomatoes, I always bought Bonnie Best tomatoes. Therefore, this year I'm going to try to grow enough that I do not have to buy them at the store and I can can them and keep them all the time. So we are going to put these at 1/8 of an inch of seed depth. When we go to transplant outside, it will be 24 inches apart. It takes roughly 10 days to emerge. Again, 8+ hours of sunlight, like the majority of tomatoes. Our ideal temp is 70 to 90 degrees Fahrenheit. Days to maturity is 80. So this will be after the Americans let freedom ring on the 4th of July, because we're looking mid-July here for any Bonnie Best tomatoes coming freshly out of your garden. And we are on to my family's absolute favorite tomato, which is a Roma tomato. This is from Purely Organic. I believe it's a Burpee brand. I'm not sure. I will have to double check. We're going to start these at 1/8 of an inch of seed depth. When we go to transplant outside, it's going to be 24 inches. It'll take roughly 10 days to emerge. They do need 8+ hours of sunlight. The more sunlight, the better the tomato. It's going to have an ideal temp of 70 to 90 degrees Fahrenheit, and days to maturity is roughly 90, so these will be later than your other tomatoes, so be prepared when your tomatoes start to ripen to just get dishes done. Roma tomatoes tend to be used for sauces. They are thicker, they have less seeds, they're easier to deal with. It's awesome. Plus, we love bruschetta, like tomato bruschetta, and my daughter makes it consistently all summer long. I cannot keep myself in Roma tomatoes. All right, what I'm doing now is I am topping off the dirt in this tray simply because these had pepper seeds in it first, which are still there. But since the water has been in there, the dirt has sunk quite a bit. So I'm just going to top those off, and it's also helping me mark to where my last row of tomatoes are going to go. We do not want to lose track. That happened in a previous video, and I got really confused, and it didn't go horribly bad. I just planted a different seed and realized I'm not going to have enough oregano to plant, so I may have to buy some, depending on what germinates and what does not. So we're going to remove the straws so we can get more dirt in those holes. And then we are going to go on to our last seed of the day. All right, these are Amish paste heirloom tomatoes, and they look really, really similar to Roma tomatoes, but I didn't know if they were Roma tomatoes, and I got them from Sweet Yards Seed Company. They are an annual, of course, because they're a tomato. We're going to start them at 1/8 of an inch of seed depth. When we go to transplant outside, they are going to need 24 inches of space each. They're going to take roughly 10 days to emerge. They're going to need 8+ hours of sunlight, 70 to 90 degrees Fahrenheit. Days to maturity is 90. See, very similar to the Roma tomato, y'all. So let's see if these do as well as the Romas that I'm used to. Thank you all for being here. I hope you have an absolutely blessed and magical week. Bye.